Okay, hello everybody, and welcome back to the Pole Vault Project. I am your host, Daniel Turvey, and we are here today with Mary Saxer to go over a couple of Mary's numerous career highlights. She was the first female high school pole vaulter to jump over 14 feet. She was 2014 indoor U.S. national champion. 2015 runner-up at Indoor Nationals, 2016, which is this year, the one that's happening right now. She just took 5th place at U.S. Indoor Nationals. She was a 2012 Olympic alternate. She's been in the top 20 in the world for the last 4 years and was 8th at Indoor World Championships in 2014. A very impressive array of career highlights. Mary, welcome. And to start out, I would love to hear a little bit about kind of your background in the world of track and field.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. This is awesome. All right, so a little background on me. I've been in the sport of track and field since I was in 8th grade. So that would be 15 years. I'm feeling old. Before that, I did gymnastics for 9 years. I started when I was 4 years old and did that. That was the only sport I did growing up because it's quite time consuming. But when middle school came around, I realized there was kind of another world out there and I wanted to dabble in some other sports, and I ended up giving up gymnastics and dabbling in track and field, of course. And I did a little bit of cheerleading just for fun and field hockey. And track and field, from early on, I could tell that was going to be my main focus. Early on, 8th grade, 9th and 10th grade, I was purely a sprinter. So I did the 100, 200 relays. Those were a lot of fun. Actually, freshman year, the high school coach said, you need to do one other event, whether it's long jump or high jump, like you need to get into the jumps. And I was like, okay. So I picked long jump and kind of took off with that. And my long jump high school career, I ended up becoming a 4-time New York State champion. And the summer between my sophomore and junior year, I was at a long jump camp, and the pole vault coach approached me and insisted I try pole vaulting. Mind you, before this, I had watched the pole vault from afar and thought, oh, that looks cool, but I was like, no thanks, like, I'm not gonna try that. It looks scary. But he insisted I try it, put a pole in my hand, and from that day and that summer, I never looked back. So I actually didn't start pole vaulting until my junior year of high school. Fortunately, I picked it up quickly and had some early success in the event. I jumped 12 feet 5 inches and placed 2nd at Indoor High School Nationals my first year competing in it, in junior year. And then senior year, I went on to, as you stated earlier, become the first high school girl to ever clear 14 feet. I broke the previous high school national record 7 times, and I graduated high school with a personal best of 14.2. And that being said, it set up my college career, so I was able to have my pick of schools, and I chose the amazing University of Notre Dame, go Fighting Irish. And I went on to compete for 4 years there, where I was a 2-time All-American, 3-time Big East Conference champion, and I placed 3rd at the 2009 NCAA Outdoor Championships. So then upon graduation, I got a lot of encouragement to continue pursuing pole vault. I had a normal marketing job lined up in Chicago for graduation and was thinking senior year would be the end of my pole vault career. But with a lot of encouragement from coaches, family, friends in the sport, I figured, hey, what the heck? I'll give this pole vault thing on the professional level a try for a year or two, see where it takes me, see if I improve at all. And here I am, this is my 7th year, I think, as a professional pole vaulter. And I've improved every year since I graduated, except for last year. And it's just been a really successful, fun, crazy, wild ride. So I feel really blessed to be doing what I'm doing and truly chasing that Olympic dream.
Awesome. What a very cool story. I think it's really cool to see it, painted out like that. And it's really obvious hearing it, from an outsider's perspective, at least, that your whole life kind of set you up for success in the pole vault. Like you said, doing gymnastics and having that, body awareness from a really, really young age, and just being an athlete from a young age, and then spending your first couple of years in track just doing sprints, just becoming faster, and then doing the long jump and learning how to jump really effectively, and then transitioning into the pole vault. I think that probably really, really set you up for success. And I think there's probably some lessons there that young vaulters could learn. If you could go back to high school age or even before, is there any advice that you would give to yourself at that age, or anything that you would maybe want to do a little differently?
That's a great
Clearly, it's worked out pretty well.
It has definitely worked out well. It's an interesting question. This is a great question, and always really challenging as well. That's why I like it. I think one big thing that, funny enough, was sort of addressed the other day. I made a post on social media of a vault from my practice, and in the caption I said, 12 years later, and I'm just learning to do this one aspect of my vault. And one of the high school club coaches commented on it, and he said, I was very touched by the comment, but he basically said, this video and what you said is a great lesson for especially any young vaulter, that you can't just like get frustrated one day and say, I can't do it, or give up. Like, I think one thing I would say is patience, patience, patience. It can be the most frustrating event, but if you take it one day at a time and truly each day try and take one positive from each practice, and approach each practice like, today I'm just going to work on this one thing, you break down the vault much more, as opposed to every day. Like our event is really hard, I think, in the fact that every competition you end on a miss, like mentally that's so challenging. How do you always walk away positive when even if you PR, you're going to take a shot at that next bar and end on a miss? And I think that's one of the biggest challenges with our particular event. So I would say patience, no matter what level you're at. If it's your first day pole vaulting, or like me, I'm in my 12th year, there's always things to improve on, and it's frustrating, but it's also one thing that I love about pole vault. So yeah, just be patient and take it one day at a time, break things down. Yeah. And another thing, I think, I wish that I did this earlier in my career, watching videos of those vaulters that have jumped higher than you. Sure, everyone has different techniques and approaches to the vault, but at the end of the day, we're all trying to accomplish the same thing: jump as high as we can and get over the bar. And these days, I do watch a lot of video of myself during practice, which I think is very beneficial. So video yourself and watch yourself in slow motion, and of other people that are jumping similar heights to me, some that are jumping lower because they do certain aspects of their vault much better than I do. And then, of course, those jumping higher and seeing what they're doing to get that extra height that I'm not quite doing. So I think that's something, if I could go back, I would start watching videos sooner.
Awesome. I think that's a really good piece of advice. I remember when I was in high school, my coach introduced me to the Neo Vault videos, and I remember just religiously watching those over and over and over again. So yeah, I think that's a fantastic piece of advice for anyone that's just getting started in the vault. You also mentioned the patience component, which is huge, because it can be really, really frustrating. And clearly, as someone who's competed internationally and had this hugely successful pole vault career, obviously you're a fantastic mental competitor. Yeah, how do you mentally approach your training and competitions?
So it depends on the day. Yeah, the mental aspect is just as important as the physical aspect of pole vault. Something I can touch on a little bit later is the whole fear component. I think pole vaulting is really cool and really fun, but it can be scary if you think about what could possibly happen. So how to manage the fear aspect, how to, on the days that you don't really feel like getting out of bed and going to the gym to lift or to get that running workout in, or even maybe a day you don't feel like vaulting, even though it is fun, how to like keep yourself going every day. And for me, one of the biggest motivators, I would say, is you mentioned earlier how I was the 2012 Olympic alternate. I tied the height of the third place girl who made the team, but I lost on a tiebreaker. And on the days that I'm having trouble getting motivated, I think back to that day and how I felt, and that puts the fire under my butt right away. And I just think that I've been there before and I don't want to be there again. And another thing is, for me, I know a high schooler, you have a lot more time left, but I know that my career is limited. Like, I can't do this until I'm 90 years old. And so I want to take advantage of every single day and really know that I gave it my all and did everything I can. And just to make the most of this relatively short career. And what other mental, the question was about mental and motivation kind of paired together, right?
Yeah.
Let's see, another aspect. So, gosh, there's just so many things to talk about in this category with pole vault. I'm kind of just rambling. Sorry. So I use a sports psychologist. I went to one during college when I was having a lot of issues with running through. I was afraid to take off the ground for months on end at one point, and it actually almost ended my career. I was almost about to give up completely. And I decided to see the sports psychologist just to talk to someone that was not at practice every day, because that wasn't my coach, or that wasn't my boyfriend or my parents. And I found it very beneficial just to let out all the emotions, all the frustrations, and really get down deep. And I found that when I was about to quit the sport altogether because I was so frustrated and afraid, I realized there was a reason that I started doing the sport in the first place. Like, from day one of picking up the pole, I was like, this is really fun. And sometimes I think we need to remember like why we started, and remember that it is fun and that it's a sport. And just kind of to go back to the basics and the groundwork of why you started. And I realized in that moment that it was fun, and I wanted to keep doing this. Like, if I quit on myself at that point when things got so hard, I would regret it forever. And so one day in college, I kind of snapped back out of it, and you saw like an immediate improvement, and I've been improving ever since that day, actually. But sometimes you just need to like take a step back, take a breather. Sometimes you need like an outside perspective. You need to talk to, like, as they say, an unbiased party. And let's see, what other aspects of the mental motivation? I talk to my sports psychologist now, like I talked to her throughout the indoor season. This indoor season was my best indoor season ever, and I felt better than ever. but I still wanted to talk to her. Like before each meet, we discussed how to approach the competition. Like if it was a college meet that I was competing in, I approached it more like a practice to focus in on, like if I had been working on 2 cues that week, I wanted to really focus on those cues in that competition. But if it was a bigger meet like USA's, my focus might be shifted elsewhere. And so the sports psychologist was able to help me narrow my focus in on, depending on what type of competition and what I needed to be focused on that week. And I'm sorry, I'm probably bouncing all around. I keep saying that. But another thing is I get asked a lot, I get messages about how I approach like big competitions, like how I calm my nerves and what my focus is. And I think one of the biggest things, like it's hard when you get in a big competition, it's easy to just kind of be starstruck by the people and the fans and just everything going on around you. And I think it's about how you control all the adrenaline and everything going on. And one way I do that is my sports psych had told me once, it's like a year or two ago, to pick one thing every competition that is the same. So for example, in the pole vault, you always have the runway, your poles, the box, the mat, the standards. So say I pick the right standard. So when I get to every competition venue, I look at the right standard, and basically that brings me back and it says, okay, this is something that's the same everywhere, same in practice, which is a more calm environment. And it just kind of reminds me that I've done this a million times, I can do it again. It's just kind of a sense of like a calming sense. And that's just a good reminder. In that instant, I just take a deep breath, and it's just like a good starting point entering any competition. And also in a big competition, when you're starting to get like all worked up and like maybe you're on a third attempt at an opening height, when you're chalking up and getting ready to step on the runway, think about like 1 or 2 cues that you've been working on in practice or that your coach told you to do. And in that moment, say, if I hit these cues, I will clear the bar. Don't focus on, I'm going to try to clear the bar. Because often when you're trying to just clear the bar, things just don't go well at all. So just focus on execution, and that can help eliminate other outside distractions I found.
Awesome. I think there's a ton of fantastic information in there. One of the things I thought was really cool about that was that you were saying that you, now when you compete in college meets, that you focus on, it's like a practice, and you're practicing the things you've been doing in practice, but you're practicing competing with those things.
Yes, exactly.
And I think that's really cool, because I think for a lot of people, the first time they go to a big college meet, that's terrifying. You know, they're competing at the college level for the first time. That's really nerve-wracking. And I think it shows a really cool shift in perspective of, once you've had that experience, once you've done it a number of times, your focus can really shift. And
absolutely. Yes.
Very cool. And you hinted earlier that you had a little story about how to approach fear.
So I don't have like one specific story necessarily, but I wanted to just touch on fear, because it's something that I deal with personally every day. And when I've talked to many people in the sport, whether they're elites or beginners, it seems like it's a common thing. So when I was talking to my sports psych, whenever I first started talking to her, I don't know, a few years ago, it came out that I'm afraid to pole vault. It's crazy. And this is my job, right? You would think I would have no fear. But the fear comes from, my brain is smart in some sense. It's telling me like, you're trying to what? Like run down this runway, plant this pole in this little area, and launch yourself up on this pole in the air. Like, and you think about, it's natural to think about what could go wrong, right? But when you focus in on how many times you've done it safely, you like trick your mind into believing that you'll be okay, which you will be. So one thing I tell like a lot of young high school girls is just remind yourself like on those days that you're having run through issues, just remind yourself how many times you've done this successfully and safely before, and you can do it again, and you're going to do it again. Another thing, touching on the fear, one thing I always suggest is if you're having a day where you're running through and you're afraid to take off the ground, I'm really focusing on the run through thing because that's specifically my fear, the taking off the ground. I know there's different components of the vault that people might be afraid of, like swinging up or whatever, but the run through thing I think is a pretty common thing. I tell people, don't be afraid to go down a pole, go down 3 poles, move up to a shorter run, and just get off the ground, hold low a few times, and slowly remind yourself like, oh, okay, I can do this. Like I can land on this big squishy mat, I'll be safe. And then slowly work your way back, work your grip up again to where you want to be to clear those high bars. But don't be afraid to take a step or 5 steps back to rebuild that base and that foundation and kind of trick your brain. Another thing, like honestly, the fear thing, like I said, every day I step on the runway, I'm afraid to pole vault, but for me, it's this constant battle between fear and a dream. And for me, the dream outweighs the fear. So even if I have a day or a few weeks where that fear is like maybe outweighing the dream factor, overall the dream, chasing the dream wins out. And that's what wins out every day for me. So that's how I'm able to somehow get past the fear.
Awesome. That's a really, really cool point. And one of my favorite authors, actually, this guy named Chris Moore, makes a very similar point. And he says that the purpose of fear is not to tell you not to do something. It's just to make you alert and aware and like have all your senses heightened. And he uses his example is like moving across the country to start a business. And it's terrifying, like, am I going to make it? Is everything going to be okay? But the fear is not saying, don't do that. It's just saying this is a very serious situation and you need all your senses firing on all cylinders in order to do this well.
I really like that. Yes, absolutely. I like that. You're right.
Awesome.
I have to read that book.
Yeah. I guess moving on to the diet and nutrition piece. Mm-hmm. I'm sure that's a huge factor. Being a professional athlete means, you're like a race car. You got to put, the best fuel in your body. What do you do? What do you eat? And what advice would you give to people in terms of eating?
Yeah. Okay. So diet, yes, is a very important component. It's something that until my professional career, honestly, I didn't pay attention to. I just ate whatever I wanted. And then once I graduated from college, I decided that I wanted to change that. So I talked to a nutritionist from the Olympic Training Center a bit. And I just got general ideas from her about things I could be eating. And I also, just talking to other athletes and other pole vaulters especially, I was sort of able to try different things out and discover what combination of things both made me feel good, like energy-wise, and both feel good when I looked in the mirror. So currently my diet consists of, I try and eat as much protein as I can. I try and eat as many vegetables as I can. And I try and limit the carbs. It's not like I don't count calories on a nutrition label. Like I said, I look at the protein, the carbs, the fiber, sugars, a little bit of fat, but not really much calories. And I try and eat a lot of non-processed things. So I try and cook, fresh meats for dinner, make my own salads every day for lunch and dinner. Snacks, I do like lots of fruits like grapes, apples. I do love peanut butter. I try to like limit the peanut butter, but but I'll do like an apple with peanut butter as a snack. I have found things like this brand of cereal called Naked brand. It's they have this cinnamon flavor, and I like having it for kind of like a dessert because it's pretty high in protein, not very much carbs, good fiber. It's sort of like a granola consistency. I have that with almond milk. Almond milk I've discovered more recently. Yeah. So the protein, a lot of protein, limit the carbs, fruits and veggies. You probably heard that a million times, I'm sure, but that's what I do. And like I said, I don't count calories and stuff. I just found that works for me. I feel energized. I feel like my body's able to recover with that. I don't really take any supplements. Like right now I'm between indoor and outdoor season, so I have like a little bit heavier training block, so I might bring a thing of protein to have like right after I work out. But other than that, I don't really supplement much. But yeah, so yep, that's my basic nutrition plan. But one thing I wanted to kind of elaborate on, I think a lot of, especially young females, I feel reach out to me through messages or whatnot about nutrition. And I think it ranges from asking what I eat, what's a good idea for snack, what's a good idea for snack when you're traveling, to just like questions about body image. I think the body image topic, it applies to all of us, but I'd say like especially females and young females. Being an athlete and a pole vaulter, you're out there competing in front of people, and I wear like a sports bra and like little shorts, and that's what works for pole vaulting so I don't knock the bar off. But it's also, there's a lot of focus on body image, and it's something I've dealt with. I've dealt with this personally earlier in my career. And I think one thing I just want to say to like everyone out there, especially the young females, is if you're working hard, putting in the work in the weight room, on the runway, doing your drills, and then off the runway, really trying to eat well, like following maybe a similar nutrition plan to what I just described. You can't compare yourself as a pole vaulter and an athlete to the models we see who are a size 0. You look at them and they're beautiful, yeah, but they are not pole vaulters. Like one thing that I've realized is, for example, I don't love like my upper legs. That's one thing that I'm a little bit self-conscious about. But one thing I've realized is that my quads are the way they are. They're powerful, and they allow me to do this event and this sport to the level that I can. And they feed my strength, which is my speed and my power. And so I might at first not love the way my legs look, but I've learned over time to embrace them and be thankful for them, and like what God gave me, because it allows me to do what I do. And I think that's kind of the message I want to portray to anyone out there, that if you're putting in the work, like I said, on the runway, in the kitchen, that as an athlete, we need to be strong, we need to be powerful. And I think it's a real thing, that the quote that the strong is the new skinny. I love that. And I love seeing women out there like Ronda Rousey. She's not a size 0, but she is beautiful in her own way, and it allows her to be a role model for women and in so many different ways. And yeah, just to embrace the athleticism and not necessarily compare yourselves to other people.
Awesome. Yeah, I think you raised a bunch of really excellent points. You reminded me with one of your quotes, you reminded me of another quote that is, the way you look is the least interesting thing about you. And like, you know, like for someone like yourself, you're like a phenomenal athlete. And that's the interesting thing about you, you know, like you can be an awesome athlete and be, you know, a physically attractive person. But I think, like you said, what's maybe more important is, do you look in the mirror and do you like yourself? And having that like athletic prowess makes you a far more interesting human being than just being like a size 0 model.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Nothing wrong with being those beautiful models. It's just everyone has different body types and a different purpose in life, and just to embrace what God gave you and utilize that. Absolutely.
And I think you brought up another really good point earlier, is that you didn't really focus on the nutrition component until you were out of college.
Yeah.
And I know I was exactly the same way. I didn't really take my eating super seriously until I was out of college. And my whole memory of being a college athlete was just being like wreck-it sore the whole time. I didn't recover between any of my workouts. And I feel like there's a lot of missed performance there for younger athletes who, of course, you know, you're 16, you can get away with eating pretty much whatever you want, but
Yeah.
how much performance is missing there by not taking the nutrition more seriously?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So also what you said earlier, if I could go back, I would probably become more aware of the value in nutrition earlier on. I think I would have seen the benefits sooner. Like you said, in college, I might have recovered from those heavy lifts a little bit quicker than eating a big pizza after or something.
Awesome. And on the subject of recovery, is there anything else that you've learned over the years in terms? I know a lot of people do like massage and soft tissue work. Like what kind of things do you do now to recover between workouts?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, one last thing. So I would say mental recovery after competitions. I always allow, this goes back to the nutrition thing. I always allow myself to eat whatever I want that night. So my weakness is pizza. I love pizza. So a lot of times that's my go-to after a competition. And I also think that's important for people to hear, because you hear of like, you know, high-level athletes, like all the really like their strict diet, all these good things they're eating. And you're like, how is that realistic to maintain? I think you need to let yourself mentally have a day or a night where you eat whatever. And then for me, I kind of feel a bit gross after that night, and it motivates me to get back on track for the next day and the next week. So so that's kind of a mental recovery thing. But physically recovery, I am all about massage. I've been fortunate so I live in Boston now, but when I was still living in Indiana, I went to Notre Dame. The chiropractor I had in college, actually worked for him for a year after college, and I was able to get massages pretty much like every week, every other week and I found them extremely beneficial with recovery. I would highly recommend them. Of course, these are your like deep get in there massage where it's like not comfortable, like nice music and candlelight, but I love them because I feel like they're so beneficial. And what else do I do? I go to a chiropractor, I'd say twice a month, just to make sure everything is kind of in line. I'm standing tall, make sure my hips are in alignment, my back's feeling good. Oh, I have these recovery boots called Normatec boots that I got this fall. And basically what they are is I put them on and they go up from my feet to my hips. And you do different settings, but it's basically pumping air and putting a lot of pressure on your legs, and essentially it circulates the blood so that like fresh blood flows to your legs. So I actually do those probably 5 to 7 days a week when I'm at home. I haven't traveled with them, but some of the competitions will have a medical staff, and if they have the Normatec boots available, I'll use them as well. And I know a lot of, especially distance runners, use them for recovery. I also like them because my coach and I joke it's my forced relaxation, because I'll do them for, I'd say on average, 40 minutes. So I have to sit on the couch and like watch a show and kind of veg out too. What else? Rolling out with a foam roller. It's not fun, but it's very important and very worth it. I spent 45 minutes yesterday rolling out my IT bands, which if any of you guys have done that, it's painful, but I'm already feeling better today. And I also I have like a little foam golf ball I travel with. So sometimes if I'm in like an airport on a layover, I'll sit on the ground. People will look at me funny and I'll roll out my glutes or hips or something. So you just find like little tricks like that work. Yeah, I think that about is the recovery that I do.
Very cool. Yeah, and for anyone that's watching, there's a website called mobilitywod.com, and they have a ton of information on there about, like you were saying, like the foam rolling and using a little ball to kind of roll yourself out and find some of those knots that a massage therapist would find, but find them yourself if you aren't like Mary and have access to massages all the time. That's a good resource for anyone. Did you have another point you wanted to make there?
No, I just remembered ice baths as well. So a lot of this recovery stuff isn't so fun, but my coach joked like a bit ago, he's like, you actually like ice baths. Like, I feel like you're a real athlete now. I mean, I don't enjoy sitting in it, but I love it because I just get out and I feel like fresh and like ready to go for the next day.
Awesome. They can be fun. If you get a bunch of people together, see how many people you can fit in an ice bath.
True.
They can be fun. Yeah. Very cool. Do you have any fun stories or anecdotes from your time as a pole vaulter?
So I couldn't really think of like a story that can be a learning lesson, something to learn from, but I do have stories about traveling with poles, just for entertainment factor, I guess. So I'll touch on that briefly. So traveling with poles, yeah. So I have this big 15-foot long bag, 8-inch diameter tube, right? So first of all, driving around, people are like, well, like, how are you going to get that there? And they're like, oh, we only have like this little Volkswagen Beetle. I'm like, no problem. So we just strap poles to the side or the top, like we're crafty, we make it work. But driving is the easy part. So flying with poles, domestically, most pole vaulters will try and fly Southwest Airlines because all their planes are the exact same size. And in their bag policy, it says they take pole vault poles. They're $75 one way, like no issues. Like Southwest is great. But then comes in, I got into a meet in France. So traveling with poles, Southwest doesn't fly to France. So there are only certain airlines that take poles, and in their bag policy, it'll say vaulting poles and it'll say however much, whatever. So I usually fly United Airlines. I have a lot of miles on them. So United takes poles. So I walk up to the counter and I'm like, hey, I'm checking the poles in. Here's your bag policy, like written out, like whatever. Well, the person at the counter goes, oh, they're not gonna fit. I'm like, how are they not gonna fit? Like they could fit sideways on this plane. This plane's huge. Like, so that's one thing. They say they're not gonna fit, which is crazy. The only planes they won't fit into the luggage thing is like the small, like regional jets. So, so they say they won't fit. Then if they do look, sometimes they'll look at the bag policy and it'll say it says $200 for a pole. So it's up to interpretation. So sometimes people will say, oh, a pole, how many poles are in your bag? So if you have 10 poles, are they going to say $200 a pole? Well, what they mean is $200 per bag, but it's up for interpretation, right? So then if they, when they finally do take the poles, the question is, so we leave them and go through security. So then they have to be taken down and around and wherever, right? And then if people don't want to be lazy, they'll put them on the plane, you know? So the story is this past summer, me and a fellow vaulter, Sandy, we were traveling from Amsterdam to a city in Croatia for a meet. And we flew Lufthansa, and which has taken poles a million times. So we check the poles, whatever, everything's great. Well, we arrive in Croatia, no poles. And, well, first, actually, I forgot. They bring the poles, they're sitting next to the plane, and then the plane leaves, and they're just sitting there. So you're like, why didn't they put them on? We get to Croatia, we're like, we saw them left there. So really long story short, no one, I don't know why they bag tag things, because no one could find where they were, these 15-foot long bags. They didn't get to the meet in time, so I had to borrow poles, which if it's rare that someone will have the same poles that you use. There's a couple different brands of poles and lengths and weight ratings, and so I tried to jump. I didn't car bar, did the best I could. So then poles didn't make it to Croatia, and I was supposed to come back to the US. Well, I just fly home without my poles, right? They're still lost. 18 days later, they finally show up in Boston. Not broken or anything, it was a miracle. But 18 days later, like, thank God it was the end of my season, but I would have had to and I only did one meet without them, but I would have had to continue trying to vault on borrowed poles. And so that, obviously, like I said, that's not a learning experience, because as much as I've traveled, I never know what I'm going to get when I go to the airport. It's very frustrating. But after the fact, it makes for good, interesting stories. And I think it's something a lot of people don't really think about, especially on a high school or college level, because you're not competing internationally, so you don't really have those issues. But yeah, so that's just kind of I've also heard of people's poles like being broken, or like they won't fit, so they like cut the end, or I don't know if these are true stories, but you hear so many different stories. So yeah, it makes for good dinner conversation.
Yeah, I bet when you decided to pursue a career as a professional pole vaulter, you didn't think you'd end up being such an expert on airlines and which size of regional jet different things will fit on.
Exactly. I can tell you like all the different types of aircraft. I'm like, oh, is it such and such? And my friends look at me like I'm crazy. But gotta know that.
Awesome. So yeah, I don't think that this Google Hangouts is the best way to address the technique part of the vault necessarily. We don't have slow motion video and all that, but is there anything that you see people do in the vault that just makes you cringe?
Oh yes, I'm sure. I would say one thing, don't rush to move up to a bigger pole too quickly. I mean, obviously we all are trying to jump higher than we have before, and a lot of times that takes getting on like a certain pole, big pole. But sometimes people are in such a rush to get on that big pole, and then they just grit their teeth and try and force things. And I think one thing I just want to say is, before you move up, unless it's like a massive blow through, really make sure that you're focusing on your technique and you're doing everything you can on the previous pole, because safety is first. And when you rush to get on that big pole, I mean, you'd hate to see someone like get rejected. So yeah, don't rush. Patience. Don't rush to get on the biggest pole in your bag. Another thing is, I mean, we're all trying to accomplish the same thing, clear the bar. There's different approaches to how to do that. But I think one thing that everyone would agree on is just the importance of what you do on the runway and at takeoff. And I would say really hone in on your takeoff, work on your takeoff, and generally just make sure that you're tall and solid at takeoff. People have different ideas about where your arms should be and whatnot, but if you're running fast, you're tall and you're solid, like you're not like losing your hips and being kind of like wiggly loosey-goosey at takeoff, I think it sets up everything else, and it sets up your whole vault and for everything else to be successful. So I guess that's what I'll say about technique. I think those are two like broad general things.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you on the takeoff piece. And clearly, as someone that focused on long jump for, 4 years as a state champion long jumper, the takeoff's not wildly different. Yeah, you're holding a pole, but the actual leaving the ground part is pretty similar. So
Absolutely.
Clearly, if you focus on long jump for a little while, it sets you up to be a pretty successful pole vaulter.
Absolutely. I would agree. Although, fun fact, I pole vault off my left foot, obviously, and I long jumped off my right foot. But the general technique and posture were pretty similar, so it was a good base for pole vaulting for sure.
Absolutely. Cool. Where can people go to follow you, find you, support you?
So I have a website. It's marysaxer.com. But more day-to-day updates would be on my Twitter, which is Sax Defy Gravity. My Instagram is just at Mary Saxer, so easy. And then my Facebook, I have an athlete page, so go like my athlete page. And am I forgetting anything else? No, I think that's about it. Yeah, but if anyone has any questions or anything, like, don't hesitate to reach out to me on any of the social media or on my website. There's a contact page, so you can email me as well. I try and respond to everyone, so as best I can. So I love hearing from everyone.
Very cool. Yeah, your website's pretty cool. One of the pages that I was looking at that I really like is you have a map with a little star or a dot for everywhere that you've jumped.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really cool to look at and just see you've jumped everywhere. You've jumped on almost every continent and, just all over the world. I think that's really, really cool.
Yeah. One of my friends from high school that I ran track with made my website for me, and she had that idea, and I think it's great because it's a great visual to just, I've jumped on almost every continent, so except Africa, but I have plans to go there for a meet this year, so I'll knock that one off.
Awesome. I almost forgot. There is one more thing that I wanted to ask you about, and that's coming off of the. For anyone that's watching this in the future, we're just coming off the indoor national and world championships, and something that became wildly apparent out of that meet is that there is a huge breadth and depth of talent in women's pole vault in the U.S. at the minute.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts about that, or any advice for young women who are just getting started in pole vaulting?
So my advice would probably just come from what I'm about to say, like my perspective on it all. Women's pole vault is just insane right now. And I think it, in the US, like you look at our top however many girls, and then you look at the world list from this year, and I think we had 4 of us, or maybe 5 of us from the US had a top 10 indoor mark in the world. So like our US championships, the top 3 marks were actually better than the top 3 from world championships. It's like a world championship every time we jump together. It's crazy, but it's extremely motivating. I've never been more motivated and just eager to get out there every day in training and practice, and eager for my outdoor season to start so I can keep upping those heights and keep pushing the envelope along with these other girls who have already started doing so. It's really, really exciting, and I think it just is setting up for like the next generation. Like you're looking at like last year in college, even there were these 2 girls that, I mean, set records like meet after meet and really put the records out there. And there's now that's the heights that they were jumping last year, that's starting to become more of the norm. And it's just awesome to see the event generally, and especially the women's side, evolve the way it has. Like this is only going to be the 5th Olympics that women's pole vault has been in. So it is still relatively new. So it's exciting to see women like break new barriers all the time, and the depth at these higher heights, like more and more women are jumping these higher heights. I think it's so exciting and extremely motivating. And I'm really hoping that it continues to bring more attention to our sport in general and our event, because I think it's really cool, but I just wish that our sport and event would get more attention. So maybe this is the answer.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the men's side is always exciting to watch, and it's it's great and it's fun. But I think if you look at the men's side, the world record just got broken last year or 2 years ago, but it stood for like 20-something years.
Exactly.
But before that, it was getting broken and broken and broken and broken. And I think women's pole vault's in a very similar place where there's so many women right at that top level. The world record's probably going to go soon, and I know the indoor record keeps getting broken. So it's a really, really exciting time for women's pole vault. It's
really
awesome to be here to watch it.
Yes, it really is.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for sticking with this and listening to this. If you have any questions for Mary, I'm sure she'd love to hear from you. If anyone has any questions for me, or things they want to hear about on the show, they can follow the Pole Vault at the Pole Vault Project on Instagram, or go like the Pole Vault Project on Facebook. Mary, thank you so much for joining us. This was fantastic, and best of luck with your outdoor season.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
All righty. Bye.
All right.